My husband loves apple pie. Well, I do too. And this is a recipe that I found on Pinterest, and I thought I would give this a try. So the first thing you do is get an iron skillet, put 1 stick of butter in it, turn that stovetop eye on to simmer, and then we are going to cut up some apples. And you're going to want to use Grannie Smith apples. When you're baking an apple pie, they're just the absolute best for baking an apple pie. And I did use the entire 3-pound bag. I'm going to start by peeling my apple, and I just peel my apples with a potato peeler. You can go all the way around this. It's so easy to do. I peeled so many apples for children who don't like the peelings, and this is the easiest way I found to do this. Make sure you get as much of the apple peeling off as you can. And next, we're going to slice these apples. And the easiest way I know to do that is just the way my grandparents and my daddy would slice an apple. They used to grab them right off the tree and slice them just like this. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. You just cut into it, apply a little pressure, and it pops right off. And be sure to watch for apple seeds. I think all of us know that. We don't want apple seeds in our apple pie. And yes, they're poisonous. They have cyanide in them. But it would take hundreds of those apple seeds, if ingested, to be fatal. So no worries there. And we are going to add about 3/4 cup of sugar to these apples. And I just slowly added it, tossing it around, just making sure that I got the apples coated. Now we are going to add some cinnamon, and the recipe called for 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I added a little bit more. I added about 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and I just slowly added this as well. Next time I make this, I'm going to add maybe some nutmeg. I don't know, what do you guys think? Nutmeg or something. This pie was absolutely wonderful, but my husband and I both agreed it was missing some little something, and I'm thinking nutmeg. Now let's add some cornstarch to this. The recipe did not call for cornstarch, but there was nothing to thicken it. So I added 1 heaping teaspoon of cornstarch, and then I went back and I added another 1/2 teaspoon of cornstarch. And I will tell you, it turned out perfect. So it did need some cornstarch. And again, just give this a toss, coating those apples really well. And while you're doing all this, do not forget about that butter and brown sugar on the stovetop eye. You've got it on simmer, but I did walk over there and check on it occasionally. And once the butter is melted, go ahead and cut it off. We're not cooking it, we're just melting it. This recipe called for store-bought pie crust. And I wanted to make homemade pie crust, but I knew time wouldn't allow for that, so yes, I cheated. I bought the store-bought pie crust, and it made it so much easier. And once I was ready to put that pie crust on this brown sugar and butter, I gave it a good stir to mix it up, and then I laid the pie crust on top, making sure to press it around the sides. Now, when I stirred the butter, I did make sure the butter was coated around the sides of that cast iron skillet so that the pie crust would not stick. So you'll want to make sure to do that. And then just press it in there. So easy. And it was the best apple pie I have ever made or eaten. But again, I'm going to add a little nutmeg next time. Okay, now we are going to put the apples on top. And you're going to think, oh, I've got too many apples. But don't worry about that, because these apples are going to cook down. And the next time, Lord willing, I make this, I might use 1.5 bags. So I might use, 4 pounds of apples, because I really would have liked for it to have more apples. But This was just absolutely delicious. Okay, now we're going to add the other crust, and you're going to want to tuck that crust in. The instructions did not say to do this, but that's just what I did. If you have a better way, you go right ahead. But I just felt like that the pie crust would meet the other pie crust. One other note, make sure those apples are all the way out to the edges. One of my edges didn't have apples, and the pie crust kind of collapsed in the edge. You'll see it in the end, but it was still very pretty. Now go ahead and cut some slits into your pie crust, however you want to do that, because you want to do that so that it will breathe. And then we're going to take an egg white, just separate an egg, and we're going to coat the top of that pie with that egg white. And then top that egg white with a little sugar, just measure with love. I just sprinkled it on there. Put it in the oven, and you're going to want to make sure to put a pan underneath it because this spills over, and it did. Next time I'm going to cut back on that brown sugar and butter. Bake on 350 degrees for 1 hour, depending on your oven. Once your pie crust is turned a really pretty golden brown, you may want to go ahead and put aluminum foil on it the last 10 minutes or so to keep from burning it. That's what I did, and voila, 1 hour later, this is so beautiful. This was an absolute beautiful pie, and my husband and I thoroughly enjoyed this. And yes, we put vanilla ice cream on top.